Today we're visiting with Linda Ferrari. She's been a longtime member here at Hope United Methodist Church. And Linda's going to share some of her activities here at the church and some of her memories of what's happened and some of the members that she's known over the time. Linda, I want to thank you for sitting for this interview.
Oh, well, thank you for asking.
The records of the church show that you've been a member here since February of 1981. That's almost 39 years now. Do you remember how you first heard about this church?
Well, we had moved here and we were in the process of looking for a church, and we just kind of drove up and down the streets, and then it was a Methodist church, which was my former church. And so we came to the church and people were very friendly, and so we just joined. I mean, they transferred my membership. So.
In 1981, they only had the one building, what we call the Fellowship Hall now.
Right.
Do you remember that?
Oh, yes, I remember we sat in chairs in the Fellowship Hall, and it was cozy.
Well, and frankly, that may have added to some of the friendly atmosphere.
Right, I think so.
Yeah.
And I remember someone, I think it was Carol Bruton, stood up and said we needed Sunday school teachers, and I thought about it, and I went home and I thought, oh, maybe that's something how I can get involved, and that's how I first got involved.
Yeah. What, were you raised as a Methodist?
Yes.
Yeah.
Went to all the camps and trips and all that stuff. Billy Graham was popular at the time, so.
Yep. Well, Alton Brown was the pastor in those days. Do you remember Al Brown?
Yes, Victor Schultz came to the
Yes.
house,
Yes.
and that's one of the other reasons why I joined.
Yep.
So.
Tell us what you remember about Victor.
Oh, he was funny. I don't remember too much other than he was very friendly and, welcoming. And his wife was also.
Yes. Well, he was the visitation pastor, I guess. He had retired and then came back here kind of as a part-time job.
Yeah, he was good.
But he came to visit me and many other people in those days. He was definitely one that would come to your house and talk to you.
Yeah. I remember him where he sat in the chair in the living room.
And did he convince you to come here? Or were you already...
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus other things. I had met some other people by then. So.
Yeah. Well, tell us what you remember about Alton Brown.
Al had good sermons, and I remember after church he would go outside and smoke his pipe.
He was a pipe smoker, that's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
And his wife Laura was also good. I enjoyed her.
Yes. Well, what were the services like when there was just one building and everybody met in the same room? You mentioned they'd sit on chairs and...
Yeah, we sat on chairs, and they were basically like they are now, only just maybe a little shorter.
They have a piano and a
Yes.
choir?
I don't remember too much about the choir.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think they had special music, but they did have a piano.
Yeah.
And we had hymnals.
Yeah.
So.
And after you heard Carol Bruton ask for Sunday school teachers, you signed up to teach Sunday school?
Oh yeah, and she got you very involved. I loved her. She was great.
I remember that. Yeah, she would just stand up and say, if you want to have a Sunday school, we need some
Right.
teachers. And if you're not going to come and help us do this, we're not going to have Sunday school.
Yeah.
And people would volunteer and like
Yeah.
you that took that seriously. What did you teach?
I just had the second graders, or not second graders, I'm sorry, 2-year-olds.
2-year-olds. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you mentioned that one of our members here that's gone on to be a pastor was in your 2-year-old class. You remember Annie Rico?
Oh, yes.
Annie now works for the Mountain Sky Conference.
Right. She was a very quiet child. But
Yep. How long did you teach the Sunday school?
oh, a couple years maybe. And then I got involved with resources and supplies for Vacation Bible School and that kind of
And
thing.
tell us what that involved.
Well, the first Vacation Bible School we had, it was called the Marketplace, and we had to make pouches, and we painted rocks, silver and gold, for coins. And I remember Dick Vickery, the pastor at the time, he took off his shoes and socks and got in the mud and the straw and pounded with his feet like they were making bricks.
Really? Well, I remember him as sort of a formal person. That surprises me.
Well, that's what we all
Shoes and
did.
socks off.
Yeah. And he was from Boston, so my mother-in-law was from Boston, so they kind of formed a bond. She was Catholic, but he came to dinner and became a good friend.
Well, and when you say resources, you were getting the curricula and the books?
Curriculum and, crayons and pencils and all that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
And how long did you do that?
Oh, probably for 6 or 7 years.
And you've also been involved, I believe, with United Methodist Women.
Right.
Yeah, can you tell us about those activities?
Oh, well, we had a bazaar just lately, and I'm treasurer right now. We have a small group. It's when Sam Day was here, his wife Barbara got a lot of the women interested in coming, so we had about 33 members. So we're probably down to about 10 to 12 right now.
Yeah.
But we do a lot of mission work. We did a big project, human trafficking, a couple years ago.
Yes.
And so, McCurdy School, we support Florence Crittenden, and that's, just a few of the,
Well, that group has been very active in educating me, frankly, on the human trafficking and many other things that United Methodist Women have sponsored here at the church that really educated me on a lot of those issues that I never thought about.
well, I think we were all surprised at the human trafficking effect here. And the people at the church were really great. They donated money and supplies.
We mentioned Dr. Vickery. He followed Al Brown here as the pastor.
Right.
And then Sam Day
Right.
was the next pastor. Tell us what you remember about Sam Day.
I remember his 3 points to his sermons. And I remember one story he told about he was given this nice pair of cowboy boots, and he didn't want to wear them. So then finally he decided he would wear them, and they were too small.
Oh.
So the lesson I learned from that, which I try to do, is that if you get something and you like it, you better use it, or you lose it.
Well, you mentioned his wife Barbara, who was very active in the UMW.
Right.
What do you remember about Barbara?
Oh, Barbara was nice, kind, and she was very crafty.
Yeah.
We had a lot of good times making crafts. And we stayed in touch until a couple years ago when she passed away. So, anyway.
Well, the church was growing quite a bit during those years, and we were expanding and building more facilities.
Right.
Were you involved in some of those projects?
No, not really. I just was kind of outsider looking in.
Yeah. Well, you also had been on fellowship and evangelism and
Right.
nominating and education, and you taught Sunday school. And were you involved with the youth and doing things with the youth group?
No, except supporting them when Brian and Nikki were in the
Yeah.
group. I didn't go on any trips, but,
And I believe you mentioned that your daughter Nikki was baptized here at Hope.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
yes.
And Brian and Nikki both were active in the youth group and
Yes, they
Sunday
were.
school here.
And Dr. Vickery had the ceremony for Brian's Eagle Scout.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Well, tell us what you remember about serving on those committees. Was that a chore, or did you enjoy some of that?
oh, I enjoyed all of it. It's been years, so I don't remember too much about the nomination, except it was hard calling people to try and get them to volunteer to be on committees.
Yes.
And I know people's time was valuable, but that was a long process.
Yeah, that's always difficult, I think, to call people and ask them to
Right.
serve in different roles and do different
And
things.
I'm not always good on the phone.
Well, do you remember after Al Brown and Dr. Vickery and Sam Day, when Margaret Hankins was the
Oh.
pastor here?
Yes.
Yeah, tell us your memories about Margaret.
Well, Margaret used to lead our women's Bible study group. That was another thing that I'm still involved in. We meet at 6:30 on Wednesday mornings. And she was quite influential in our group. And we met that early because a lot of the ladies worked.
I see.
So, and then 4 of us still continue.
That group still
That group.
continues today?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, most people have spoken very highly of Margaret. I think she impacted a lot of our lives.
Oh, yeah.
She was a wonderful lady.
She was a great counselor at a time when I had difficulty in my family. So she was very helpful.
Yeah. she's a very compassionate and wise person in my view.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I appreciate you saying that. After Margaret, and she served part of the time also as a co-pastor with John Lee.
Right.
Do you remember that?
I remember John. He was a good friend of a friend of mine. John was very quiet. He was also very compassionate, and I liked him. I haven't heard from John in a while, but there for a while I kept up with him.
Yeah. Well, Margaret was the first senior pastor here as a lady. Did
Right.
you have any feelings about that?
Oh, I thought it was great.
I know that was a point of discussion, but
Oh,
after
I'm sure.
people got to know Margaret, and certainly with her wisdom and experience,
Right.
said that was the right choice. It was a wonderful decision to put her. She later served with Steve Miller as a co-pastor with Steve. Do you remember Steve?
I remember Steve. Margaret and Steve performed the wedding ceremony for my daughter Nicole.
Okay.
So, and Steve, my husband, who was Catholic, loved Steve. He even came to Steve's Bible study sessions.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Huh?
which I thought was, was good.
Yeah. And do you remember some of the lady pastors that we've had here? Marilyn Lesser?
Marilyn Lesser, yes. Marilyn got me involved in disciple Bible study groups, and she was active in UMW for a little while until she got sick.
Yeah.
And I kept in touch with she and Al for a while, but she was really great. I
Yeah.
liked her too.
And Marla Cowers, did you know Marla?
Not too well. She, I think, attended one of our women's Bible study sessions, but that's about all.
Yeah.
I didn't.
And more recently, Stephanie Price.
Oh, Stephanie's great.
Yeah.
Stephanie and Dale Beck,
Yes.
when my husband was sick, came to the hospital and were very, compassionate.
Yes. And Dale Beck served here for a year as the interim
Right.
pastor when we were kind of between leadership roles for the senior pastor, but you remember him?
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
he was great.
I liked him.
I liked him. He had a calming way.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
after that, Steve Warren was here. Remember Steve?
I remember Steve, not too much, but he
And
was
then
also.
Don Bird.
Don Bird, yes, Don, his dad was a teacher, instructor down at the Air Force Academy, so Don and I would talk about the Air Force and their games.
And that's part of your family tradition,
Oh,
that
yes.
Chuck was in the Air Force and went to the academy.
Right,
And Brian.
yeah. Well, Brian didn't go to the academy, but he went through the ROTC program in University of Arizona.
Yeah. And you served in the Air Force.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, so it was a great time.
Yeah. And after Steve, after Don Bird was here, Claire McNulty Drews, the senior pastor now, you know her?
Oh, yes, she's great.
Yeah.
Love her sermons, and she's a great person. She's had some health issues, but hopefully she's getting better.
Yes, I hope so too. I think so. Well, you've been a member at Hope here for a long time. Can you tell us what the church has meant to you and your family?
Oh, it's kind of like a foundation, a cornerstone. Been, great. Helped.
Yeah. What about your participation? Do you have a favorite memory of things you were involved in here at the church?
I think that Marketplace, the Vacation Bible School, was very rewarding.
Yeah.
And also, Nick Hull and I went to Africa with Ann Fort in
Oh, we did.
2002.
Yeah.
And that was a very life-changing experience.
Can you tell us about that trip?
We were there 3 weeks. Fortunately, no one got sick. There were 14 from the church and one from, I think, Cheyenne, Wyoming. And we were in Nairobi, and we painted library rooms, I think, at the Methodist Church there.
Yes.
And we stayed at the university. They couldn't get over how much water we drank because we had gallons of water. Then we went to Mombasa for a safari for about 3 or 4 days.
Yeah. At the end of the work time?
Right, and I remember one incident. I had these old tennis shoes and I threw them away, and in the morning I'd get them back and I'd throw them away again and I'd get them back. So,
They couldn't imagine you throwing something away?
yeah, but they had holes in them and they were really bad. So,
Well, you mentioned that this was kind of a life-changing event. Tell us a little bit about that.
well, just the fact that people would come walk 3 to 5 hours just to see us when we had church services, and they were so friendly, and they were very open about their religion. A lot of music and dancing,
Yeah.
and it just kind of made you step back and, take a look at what you're doing and how you can improve.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned your daughter went with you. How old was she when you went on this trip?
See, that was in 2002, so I think she just graduated from college.
That must have been a special time for the two of you.
Oh, it was. Yeah. I didn't know she was going until a couple months before, but she said she wanted to go, and I thought, well, good. So it was a good bonding experience
Yeah, I would
for
think
us,
so.
too.
Well, Ann Ford, we kind of call the saint of the church sometimes, but she has been so active in the Kenyan
Right.
mission and building churches there and continuing to work there. That's wonderful that you and your daughter could go.
Oh, yeah, it was, like I said, a great experience.
Do you remember certain members or people that you've known here at the church that you remember?
Well, I got too many to name, but you're one.
Oh, well, thank you.
You were a great influence on Nicole. She still talks about you.
Well, she's a wonderful young lady.
And let's see, Kate Stapleton helped.
Yes.
When my husband passed, she was there. Stephanie Price, Claire, of course, Ann Ford, just, to name a few.
Yep.
Barb Herbal Hendricks, I could go on and on. I'm afraid to name everybody. I'm afraid I'll miss
I
someone.
understand, yes. Well, this church is a bedrock for friendships and kind of an extended family. As you mentioned, that people have meant things at different times in your life.
Right.
I think that's part of what the church is for.
That's right.
Can you tell us what you like best about Hope Church?
I like the people. The pastors have all been very good to me. Let's see, the fellowship in between services. I've met a lot of good people and friends through the committees.
Yeah.
That's, don't know too much more to say.
Sure, sure. Well, you've been a member here for nearly 39 years. What would you like to see Hope do in the next 39 years?
I've thought a lot about that, and I don't really know. I guess just to keep being open, being what you call in a church that accepts everybody,
Yeah.
No matter religion, just helping other people in the community. I can't think of.
Well, as you know, the church at this point is going through some difficult times and primarily recognition or acceptance of lesbian, gay people
Right.
and transgender people. Do you have feelings about that?
I think we should, everybody is different, everybody. That's between God and them.
Well, we've talked a lot about special people and special times here at the church. Do you have other favorite memories that we haven't talked about?
Can't think offhand. Setting up the mitten tree, maybe. Kate Stapleton helped me one year. I can't think of anything else.
And
right
tell
now.
us what the mitten tree involves.
Well, at Christmas time, we've asked people to bring in hats, gloves, mittens, scarves, diapers for individuals, and then we usually donate it to a charity.
And is that part of UNW?
Yes.
Yeah, that they sponsor the mitten tree.
Right.
That's been a tradition here for years.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And then there's also another mitten tree that goes on year-round, and it's by the fellowship hall door on a stand, and people can knit and bring in stuff that they've knitted, hats, gloves, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've talked about some of the pastors and the expansion of the church here and different things. Do you have other memories that come to mind when you're talking about this church?
I remember when we did the marketplace, I go back to the marketplace
Yes.
again, and we brought some animals in, and my son Brian rode in on a horse with a crown on.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And Jackie Gable, she was in charge then, the whole marketplace.
Yeah.
And we went and got wool from farms for lambs, and we had the kids, clean it, and so that's that's one of,
Those are great memories.
oh yeah,
Well, this community has grown considerably. When the church started, it was literally the only building on this large block. The barn stood over where the synagogue is now,
Yeah.
and horses were kept right next to this property. It was sort of a rural area, but certainly grown now that it's
Sure has.
much more part of the metropolitan area and grown around this church.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's wonderful that you've had this as a church home for nearly 39 years now. Your family grew up here and it's been a part of your life.
Yeah.
You have other special memories that we haven't talked about?
Can't think of, I probably will later, but I can't think of anything right now.
Sure. Well, Linda, I want to thank you again for sitting for this interview. This is part of the archives and the history of the church, to talk to people that have been here for many years and have enjoyed this church, and I appreciate you sitting for this interview.
Well, thank you for asking.
Yeah, my pleasure.